This is a Jmix exclusive.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound sign. You entered 785531. If this is correct, press 1. To re-enter your access code, press 2. There is one other participant in this conference. Please announce yourself.
This is Jesse.
Oh, hey, what's going on?
What's up, Anton? How you doing, buddy?
Good. Let me call up Greg. He hasn't called yet.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, what's going on? Did you get the text I sent you about the phone number? Oh, okay. All right. I'll see you there in a second. Okay. Obvious. Don't know. He's calling it right now. Let me call you from. I'm gonna call the conference from my house phone so there's a better reception. I'm on Skype right now.
Okay. Yeah, it's a lot of muffling.
Greg.
How you doing, Greg? It's Jesse.
What's
up? We're waiting on Anton to, I think he's calling in from a different phone. He's on Skype. I want to say something to you, and I would prefer that this is edited out of the interview, but I'm going to keep it clean, man. I'm not going to call you any names. I'm not going to yell. I just want it clean, and after this is all said and done, no, I won't attack you on the boards if we just want to leave it alone. This is for everybody. This is for you. It's for me. And let's be done with it, if that's okay with you.
It's all the same to me, to be honest. I don't. Whatever approach you decide to take is fine with me.
Okay, buddy.
Anton.
All right. For the formalities to get out of the way, Greg, you do understand by California law you are being recorded, correct?
Anton, are you recording independently?
Yeah. Hold on. Hold on a second. Hold on. I'm having to use this since.
This conference is being recorded.
I don't think you could get any more blunt than that, huh?
Yep, that works.
Okay, so we all know it's being recorded.
Yeah, the lady has a good voice. All right, give me just 1 second. I just got in. Well, let's just say I'm not going to probably eat any Taco Bell anytime soon. Just had a kind of bad experience there. Give me 1 second.
By the way, Greg, if I explain this to Anton, if for some reason I go silent, I got a lot of wind going on. My modem might blow out. If that's the case, just stay on the line. I'll call back on my phone.
Okay.
Let's see, Kurt Cobain. I just wrote down a quick intro for both you guys. I know it's kind of lame and corny, but just for professionalism, I guess. Jesse, just real quick, just so I'll put this in here. And obviously, just to let both of you guys know, the first couple minutes I'll probably cut off. I'll probably just cut out. I'll cut out when I actually post it.
Understood.
I'll start it when I say, thanks for listening, blah blah blah. Jesse, who beside Kurt Cobain, I put Kathy Scott. Who's some of the other people you interviewed?
Ronnie King, Lance Pierre, John B. Gosh, it's a lot of people. Frank Alexander.
Yeah, Frank Alexander. Okay. I just wanted just a couple ones just to say like who you interviewed and stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
And of course, Greg Kading.
Right. I was going to name him last, actually. Yeah. Okay. And I'm just going to start off with a kind of a formal opening, if you know what I mean, and then kind of get to it. All right. Are both you guys ready?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. Thanks for listening. This is Anton Beatty. Today's date is August the 13th, 2013. I'm pleased to have with me two special guests. Today we're going to be talking about the issues revolving around the murder cases of two of the biggest names in rap, even 16 or 17 years later, perhaps. Tupac Shakur, who passed away September 13th, 1996, and the notorious B.I.G., Chris Wallace, who passed away March 9th, 1997, about 6 months later, and the source of the investigation The first guest is an individual who led the investigation for a period of time in the LAPD. He specialized in gangs, narcotics, homicides, and other federal task forces. He's also the author of Murder Rap, the untold story of the Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur investigations. I'll have the Amazon link in the description box. Detective Greg Kading. Greg, first, just thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, Anton.
Yeah, no problem. And my other guest is a researcher who has actually had the pleasure of interviewing several key figures who was not only close to the late Tupac Shakur personally, so those involved with Death Row Records, the record label he was involved with the last year of his life, as well as those involved in the investigation stemming from his untimely death. He's interviewed key figures like Kurt Cobain, award-winning Kathy Scott, who wrote The Murder of Tupac Shakur, Lance Pierre, John B., the late Frank Alexander, R.J. Bond, the producer of Tupac Assassination 1 and 2, and also, incidentally and ironically, Detective Greg Kading. Now tonight, what we're going to be discussing is, some call it a debate, a discussion, revolving around issues revolving it. I told you guys, I kind of let you guys talk to each other. You don't have to, there's not the rule that you're not allowed to talk to each other like in some debates. This is, for those who don't know, this is kind of a buildup of some comments going back and forth in some of the Tupac forums like Tupac Nation, Machiavelli boards, Tupac forums, and some other ones. I hope no one gets mad if I forget them by mistake right now.
Let's throw in Truth About Tupac. Quick shout-out.
There you go. And I will let you guys ask each other questions. And the thing that I ask both you gentlemen to do, not to do, definitely, is no personal attacks, no ad hominem attacks. I think the saying is true that personal attacks are the last breath of an exhausted argument. And just want to keep it one issue at a time. If someone asks a question, answer it directly and ask a direct question. And just as gentlemen, like I said, just personal attacks, just try to keep out of it, if you know what I mean. Jesse, Mr. Surratt, I will
Yes, sir.
let you go.
All right, Greg. Why did you on January 1st, 2013, personally email me and other webmasters an internal document with Richard Bond's home address unredacted?
I was responding to a conversation that you and I had where you had apprised me that Mr. Bond was, and others, were developing a character assassination, a campaign smear, however you want to phrase it, that they, and I have the email where you told me directly that they felt that they were going to become irrelevant if they didn't discredit me. So they had this plan intact, and you were privy to that. And so once you apprised me of that situation about R.J. Bond and his scheme, I sent you the R.J. Bond complaint, or at least a portion of the R.J. Bond complaint, which he had lodged against me with the LAPD.
What were you trying to prove with the document?
I was trying to show you, since you had called me and given me that information, that I was already aware of Mr. Bond's tactics and already aware of his intentions because I was aware of the LAPD complaint he had made. I was simply apprising you. And as you know, I never asked you to post it. I simply gave it to you. Now, you guys have spun that to say that I gave it to you and posted his address, which you know I never did, nor did you ever post it. His address was never posted. And even though you guys continue to say that, you know that's not true.
That's a falsehood. It was posted, unredacted, on Truth About Tupac. I'm not the only person you sent it to, and you sent it to me in response.
It was absolutely redacted on Truth About Tupac.
Really?
And Asher Underwood, who was the recipient of that document, made sure it was redacted because he called me and said, Greg, I'm redacting this before I post it. And I said, I think that's a great idea. I'd never asked you to post it, and I never even suggested that you post it. I simply gave it to you so that you are aware of the complaint that Bond had made. It was relevant to the conversation.
Why did you not redact it? Why did you feel that it was my business to know his personal address?
Well, because you were the one calling me, telling me that he was involved in this scheme. You guys are friends. If I give you a document with his address on it, how harmless is that when you guys are friends? You know damn well who he is and probably where he lives. It's irrelevant whether his address is on it because it was a personal document given to you. If you want to post it, it's your responsibility to redact it.
Was it Asher's responsibility to redact it when you gave it to him as well?
Absolutely. It's his website, and he's the one posting it. I didn't post it. If I was going to post something, then it's my responsibility to redact it.
But you did redact Tammy Hawkins' name. Badly, may I add. So in a sense, your argument's kind of fallen flat. You protected the name of a witness that you stated yourself was a criminal involved with criminal activity. Why would you not?
I was posting something publicly, so therefore I have a responsibility to look out for their welfare. If I'm giving you a document and it is not being published publicly, then it's your responsibility if you publish it publicly.
Why would you protect Tammy Hawkins' name and not protect a personal, innocent civilian?
By doing what?
By redacting his home address.
You don't know that? He's your friend.
That's not the point, Greg.
That's absolutely the point. Why are you taking on his fight? That's the point. If R.J. Bond has a issue with this, then he can take it up with me publicly.
Just to clarify, just to ask, I don't mean to cut you guys off. Jesse, are you saying that he should have? That it was?
No, absolutely. He sent his address unredacted. I did not know his address. I'd only interviewed him. And Greg says it's a call or it's an email. I sent him a Facebook message saying, "Look, this is going to happen." RJ knows that. I know that. So you're not busting me out, Greg. I'm sorry, but
okay, here, let me just read the email. Let me just pull up the email and we can read it.
Well, you can read it all day, but why don't you show the email? Because I can read stuff all day. And that's the problem I have is you would like to show.
I'm happy too. I'll be happy to make sure that gets brought up because it's clearly.
Well, you can do that. What were you trying? The question I asked you that you're dancing around is what were you trying to prove with the document?
I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was simply giving you a document to establish that I was aware of R.J. Bond's intentions. Here is your statement. You called me, Greg, R.J. Bond and others feel that they're going to become irrelevant unless they discredit you.
Okay, no, I didn't say irrelevant. Why don't you just post a screenshot and we'll not go there because I can say that you said something, but that's hearsay. You just post. If I have an email, you have an email. Post the email.
Okay, so these are the same emails that you keep denying even exist.
No, I'm not denying that these emails exist, Greg. I'm denying that you're putting them in context. I'm denying that you're actually giving the full email. You're cherry-picking emails. Now,
Jesse,
can we get
on me?
Wait, I'm sorry. Just as you guys both know, I know it gets heated sometimes, but there has to be one person at a time, and I swear you guys will be able to finish. But
no problem.
It has to be one at a time. I'm sorry. Jesse, you were saying?
Okay. You sent me that document, and you said to me, or you typed to me, and I can show this, that was proof that you had been cleared by the Internal Affairs. Am I wrong?
repeat that, Jesse. I'm not sure which internal affairs you're talking about. You're talking about the one with R.J. Bond or the
Yes.
one with...
I'm talking
the
about the document with R.J. Bond. You sent it to me to show me that when R.J. Bond filed a complaint that you were cleared. Is that correct?
No, well, maybe that was part of it. I don't know. If I did, well, then sure enough, that would be relevant.
Okay. Yes.
Sending it to you saying that it's been cleared, yeah, obviously, then I think that you might have been interested to know that.
Well, the document clearly states the investigation due violating department policy and endangering the life of a confidential witness was classified as no department employee, which means that because you were not an active, keyword being active, employee of the department, internal affairs could not investigate those claims. So I don't understand the purpose of the email.
Well, if you'll let me respond, all you're demonstrating is your actual ignorance of LAPD internal affairs policy. Of course they have a responsibility to look into this, and they did. They spent 6 months investigating this. They called me for an interview. They talked to several people, including the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI. They conducted a thorough investigation, as is their responsibility, regardless of whether I'm still employed there or not.
If you don't mind if I ask you a question, Detective, about that. If there was foul play, even if you were retired, would you still face any type of I don't want to say charges, but any type of anything?
Yeah, absolutely. They would sustain the complaint. Regardless of whether I'm employed there or not, they would still sustain the complaint, saying that they found me to be essentially guilty of the charges lodged, which, of course, wasn't the case. They found that there was no misconduct. As a matter of fact, what they said in the complaint was that there is no policy that I violated.
So is it the internal affairs job to look into retired cops' misconduct?
It's their job to look into every one of their department employees, whether he's retired or current. They still have a responsibility because it affects the reputation of their department. So certainly, yes, they do, and they do it all the time.
In your earlier interview with Anton, you said a prosecution case regarding the Tupac murder would go to shit really quickly in a case based on the type of witnesses that you have so far. Is this not the same thing that happened with the Torres Ramos case due to your repeated, 5 times to be exact, misrepresentations of truth in your search warrant?
No, absolutely not.
Well, okay. You stated it was a mistake that they found and an unintentional error concerning the Torres case and the reason that you were pulled off the Biggie Smalls case, the Christopher Wallace case. You hold firm to that?
That it was an unintentional error? Absolutely.
Was it 5 unintentional errors?
No, it was 1 search warrant.
Well, this search warrant included not just typos, but a complete fabrication of exactly how many recorded intercepted calls from George Torres, plus that there was an omitted evidence withheld from discovery. How could you make so many wrong mistakes when you had at your disposal the actual recording of the conversations as well as the transcriptions of the conversations made by the operators in the wiretap room?
Because when I wrote the search warrant, I was simply doing what I had done 1,000 times. I used the best recollection I had. I should have used the tapes, but the mistakes were innocuous. I used a 2 when I should have said a when, and very simple phrasing. As you can see when you read that internal affairs complaint, they say I paraphrased when I used quotes, which was a mistake, and that's what I got grilled for. It had nothing to do with the validity of the search warrant, had nothing to do with the validity of the charges. It was a mistake that I made, and it was something that I have to accept as, my own error. But think about this. Use a little bit of logic. Why would I intentionally sabotage my own warrant when I know that there's recordings that can be used to discredit me? Why would I intentionally then sabotage my own warrants knowing that those recordings are available?
That would be my next question, Greg. And, you've used this excuse before.
Oh, it was an unintentional mistake. It was simply that. You can twist it into this whole thing as false representation, but you're never going to get there. And
No,
nobody's going to agree with that. There was a very thorough investigation conducted, and they came up with the same conclusions.
That's
Hey,
not,
Kading
that's
made a
not
mistake.
true.
It
That is
happens.
not
In
true.
25 years and hundreds of search warrants, I made a mistake.
No, the court found that this is a quote from Judge Wilson, that the officer's Kading's explanation that this was merely a mistake is not credible. Not credible. And when given testimony in a conversation with Latimer that this is an implausible excuse, that Officer Kading actually participated in this conversation.
How could I have participated in a conversation? I was not privy to it. I was hearing it on a wiretap. So.
It's what the court docs say. The bottom line is the United States Ninth District Court's conclusion is that your conduct was contrary to law enforcement norms, and the court on separate earlier occasions found your honesty questionable. And the reason that I bring this up is, you know, if your credibility is being questioned openly in court more than once, then we have to start looking at your credibility as concerning the Tupac and Christopher Wallace murder case.
Fair enough. Then do that. But pay attention to the documents and see what they actually say. As you can read, Judge Wilson said, I never made a finding that Detective Kading was intentionally lying. He was in reckless disregard because he should have listened to the tapes. It's very clear what his finding was. There was never any finding of... Do you know what would have happened if they found that that was intentional? I would have been sued civilly. It would have been a crime of perjury. Well, of course, there was none of that took place because everybody recognized it was an unintentional mistake, period.
Is it not in the department's best interest to clear a retired officer accused of wrongdoing as to not jeopardize previous cases and convictions that you were a part of, and to deflect any tarnish of the LAPD in lieu of the Valletta Wallace lawsuit, and to implicate the LAPD in any wrong...
LAPD officer
Can I finish my question?
Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, let Jesse just finish the question. Have however long you want to.
Well, you can re-edit it or you can play it again. You know, is it not in LAPD department's best interest to clear a retired officer accused of wrongdoing as to not jeopardize previous cases and convictions you were a part of, and to deflect any tarnish on the LAPD in lieu of the repeated attempts from Valletta Wallace to implicate the LAPD in wrongdoing of death of her son?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It doesn't. The LAPD knows that the truth is going to surface regardless. And so they're intentional, what you're representing, as an intentional neglect to look into things properly and then to ignore them is ludicrous.
Okay, earlier in your response to Russell Poole, you interviewed with the gentleman that we're talking to, Anton Beatty. You said that there were discovery issues that were based solely on the shoulders of prosecutor Tim C. Wrighton. Did you not, as a detective, work with him?
Yes, and we gave him every single bit of discovery material that was in the investigation. He chose to turn over redacted notebooks. We don't get to make that decision. Prosecutors determine what evidence is going to be turned over to the defense. Detectives don't participate in that decision-making process. We simply give him everything. He decides what's going to be used and not used. We had nothing to do with the discovery material, and if you knew anything about criminal law, then you would recognize that. Detectives don't make these decisions.
Greg, you can keep throwing out that you know a lot about criminal law, and I'll give you that. I'm not saying that you didn't have a career in law enforcement. I've been on the other side of that, and I know a little bit myself. And is it not the case that he feels, this prosecutor, that you misled him, and that he himself has said that he felt duped? You know, prosecutors have to be able to rely on the investigators, and was he not transferred due to your misconduct?
Absolutely not. He wouldn't get transferred if it was my misconduct. He'd only get transferred if it was his own shortcomings. He had a very complicated case. He was facing attorneys that were being paid upwards of $15 million that had years to go through every single document and find problems with it. He had a very daunting prosecution, a very daunting challenge, and he fell short in a couple of areas, and one of them was discovery. It's on his shoulders, as is all cases in a criminal prosecution. We had given him everything that existed in the case. What he decides to and not to turn over is his responsibility, Jesse. And that's what I keep saying. If you knew about criminal prosecution, you would understand that.
I know that prosecutors rely on the detectives providing the evidence to form their case. Am I wrong on that, Greg?
What evidence? It was discovery material. It wasn't evidence. It was volumes and volumes of notebooks that were given to him. He redacted. He gave them to the defense. They challenged it. They had them unredacted, and once they got the unredacted copies, they found a few things that they thought were relevant to the case, and that was it. And the judge said, well, you guys screwed up. Case dismissed. Retry it if you'd like.
Did you not make repeated promises for leniency and benefits in 2 different interrogations involving the Torres case?
Absolutely not. And here again shows your naivety of the situation. Detectives don't get to make those promises. Anything that is guaranteed, it comes from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it's a very, very structured process. We can offer ideas like, hey, if you want to talk to me, I can put in a good word. But we can't make any guarantees, and nor do we make promises. We simply make suggestions, and we work with the attorneys in following up on those.
So is defense attorney Stephen Madison and L.A. Weekly lying when they said that you stated, it is always this way, man, I have to come up with the answers and tell you, and you just say, yeah, you're right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's Stephen Madison twisting and taking that conversation out of context. But you can't expect him not to do that. He's getting paid $15 million to defend a murderer. Of course he's going to attack the prosecution. Of course he's going to attack the detective. He's going to attack everything he can. He has to, just like what R.J. Bond has to do. You have to discredit the messenger because you can't discredit the evidence.
Well, did Judge Wilson not openly question your credibility in court and say, quote, that he was concerned about this officer Kading in reference to your interrogation tactics?
And does he not also say, I found that Detective Kading was credible in other areas, and I'm not saying that he couldn't be considered credible in this case or in other cases. So if you're going to give the story, give the whole story, because Judge Wilson made it very clear. He found me problematic on one thing, and that was a search warrant that I made a mistake on, period.
He also found your interrogation tactics problematic.
Maybe he doesn't like the fact that I befriend these guys in order to get them to cooperate. Maybe he doesn't like the idea that I go above and beyond in order to make progress in a case. I don't know, but this is law enforcement, and this is what cops do. We try to get people to cooperate so that we can make inroads in a case, especially an old case, especially a celebrity case, and one that's as problematic as these are. So, yeah, maybe he doesn't like it, but you know, it's law enforcement, it's what we do, and it's approved tactics.
I apologize to interrupt you guys. I really do. Can I ask both you gentlemen the same question? And one of you guys, whoever gets it first, just gets it. Did Judge Wilson did he? I'll ask Mr. Surratt this if you don't mind. Did Judge Wilson say that Detective Kading was intentionally lying and intentionally falsifying any reports? Did he say that he intentionally did anything wrong?
He said, I don't have the court documents in front of me, so I'm going to have to paraphrase.
Okay.
Now quote me.
Wait a second.
Now, quote,
we came to this debate with this issue in mind.
Okay.
Wait, I just want to get Jesse first, and then Detective, you could have however long you want to. But Mr. Surratt, did Judge Wilson?
No, he did not say that specifically, but I can tell you what he did state. I can tell you what he did state. And he did state that it was done with a reckless disregard for the truth, and it was questioned about the excuse that Greg gave because he had transcripts sitting in front of him. He had the audio in front of him, and it wasn't one clerical error. It was actually 4 clerical errors, and it was also a misrepresentation of how many intercepted phone calls George Torres has. This is not a case of one mistake. It's a case of multiple mistakes on a search warrant. So, Greg, you can spin this however you want, but it's not.
I'll just read some of the documents because I brought them.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, right here. Page 35 of Judge Wilson's 147-page ruling, down towards the bottom. Mm-hmm. The court never found that Detective Kading was intentionally lying. The court found that Detective Kading acted with reckless disregard. he had available to him the recorded calls, yet he misquoted them. Okay? Do you know the difference between reckless disregard and intentional lying?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you understand this specific term, reckless disregard, in its legal sense. You've researched that?
Greg, you don't have to be
I'm asking you a
condescending.
question.
I
Did
know.
you research that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so you know that reckless disregard is not an intentional act. As a matter of fact, it's very clear with Judge Wilson says, I never found Detective Kading intentionally lied. He acted with reckless disregard. Something entirely different.
Yeah, it's an unprovable lie.
What's the legal definition, if any of you guys know, for reckless disregard? What's the legal definition for that?
Go ahead, Greg. Go
Go ahead, Jess. You researched it.
Oh, you're the expert.
Okay, so you don't have it then.
Not in front of me.
Mr. Surratt, I'm just asking, do you know what the legal definition, because it has one, and anyone familiar with the O.J. Simpson case knows this, when Judge Ito grilled out, getting a brain freeze, but there is a legal definition for a reckless disregard.
It was Van Adder, by the way.
Van Adder, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's when you do something without considering the consequence, essentially. So it doesn't mean that anything.
So you can paraphrase, but I can't. Because I don't have it sitting in front of me. You're going to be condescending, and you can paraphrase, but I can't. I didn't answer the...
Go ahead. Why don't you read it then, Anton, for both of us?
Okay, I had it earlier.
So do you admit, Jesse, that this document says Detective Kading never intentionally lied, but you've been ranting and raving for 6 months now saying that Detective Kading intentionally lied and that these court records dictate that? So now who actually was misrepresenting?
You, according to the court documents, my friend.
They're right here. You're the one who's been ranting and raving, hey, there's been endless lies. He's been intentionally doing this, intentionally doing that.
I've got more. I mean, if you would like to continue the debate, I've got more.
Then bring it.
All right.
What we're here for.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
In your book, Murder Rap, you try to debunk Russell Poole's claims that corrupt LAPD officers, Suge Knight, Reggie Wright, and Amir Muhammad were responsible for the murder of Chris Wallace. Right? You said Poochie Faust did the killing, right?
Right.
On page 245 of your book, you state, we had all but totally disproved that particular hypothesis once and forever. There is no police conspiracy. Do you stand by those statements?
Absolutely.
Then let's talk about David Mack. What kind of
Talk
car?
about him.
What kind of car did he own on the night of the shooting?
A black SS Impala.
Reggie Baylock, who you stated had the best view of what happened, page 30 on Murder Rap, stated it was a black Chevy Impala. You said in your book that this is not important in the case. Why?
Because 30 different people had black Chevy Impalas, green Chevy Impalas, gray Chevy. There were so many Impalas that you can't use that one piece of information to draw a conclusion from. And that's where Russell Poole made his mistakes, is that he was drawing conclusion based on selective information and ignoring the other information that refuted it. Most of the witnesses said that it was a green Impala. Even the one on the 911 tape refers to it as an aqua blue Impala. So once we knew that there was going to be this ambiguity about the color of the car, we knew that we could not rely on that solely to draw a conclusion.
And I agree with you.
He had a green Impala at the time.
And I agree with you. You can't.
TJ Quick's bodyguard had a black one at the time. There were so many Impalas that you couldn't put all of those eggs in that basket, Jesse.
I completely understand that. But when you put that together, combined with the suspicious illness days that he took from work, and the black Chevy Impala that was reportedly used at a bank robbery that David Mack was involved in, do you deny that Mack wore blood red suits that Suge Knight favored? Do you deny that Mack had a shrine to Tupac in his house?
First of all, he didn't use the black Impala in the bank robbery. He used a stolen van. So you need to get those facts straight. And regardless of whether this guy wore red suits or not, you can't take these circumstantial things and draw conclusions of them and accuse somebody of murder.
Absolutely, but what about the fact that he had 9mm Gecko ammunition in his house?
So
Why
did
did you...
Orlando Anderson. So did half a dozen other people in Compton during the search. That ammo was not as rare as the media led
Really?
everybody to believe.
Really?
It was coming up everywhere.
Really? At the time of the Chris
Absolutely.
Wallace murder, there was 2 known manufacturers of that ammo. One was in New Jersey. No, let me finish. One was in California. All right? The Gecko 9mm rounds found in his house was confirmed by the FBI, and you said that these are somewhat rare and not very rare. Well, the FBI disagrees with you because when it looked it up in its database, it couldn't match and it couldn't find another round of 9mm Gecko ammunition in any other case file that it had, and you were privy to the FBI database on the task force, correct, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything.
So you don't find it quite odd? I mean, you're saying that this is, not a, it's kind of rare, but it's not very rare. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it's being found everywhere else. The point is that in order to accuse somebody of murder, you have to get shell casings that match, not just some type of ammo. And that's where I am debating with you because I don't think you understand what takes place in a criminal investigation. So you have to understand that we go through all of this, Jesse. We look into all this. We're open-minded about it all. We want to know wherever the evidence leads. That's the truth that we want to follow. Okay? We're not going to take circumstantial information or circumstantial or suspicious information and draw conclusions from it. We've already seen how quickly that goes sideways. And the FBI absolutely disregarded Poole's theory. They hung up the case when they found no evidence to support it.
Are you denying that the FBI in their database did not have Gecko 9mm ammunition in their database of murders? Are you denying that?
The FBI does not have a drug fire database, so I don't even know.
I didn't say drug fire database. I said...
And what is your point, that there's no Gecko ammunition in that database?
That's what I'm saying, that they had no murders. They had no murders at that time committed with that type of ammunition, and you said that this is somewhat rare, not very rare, and the fact of the matter is that this is a very telling piece of evidence that you omit from your book because you cherry-pick what information you want to put in there and what information you don't. And I have more, if you would like it.
Absolutely, go. What we're here for.
All right. Let's talk about Harry Billups, a.k.a. Amir Muhammad. What is his relationship to David Mack?
His relationship with David Mack was they were college roommates. That's how they began their relationship, and they became friends.
You say in your Clearing the Rubble chapter, page 90 of Murder Rap, that the composite drawing made by Eugene Deal, who was the bodyguard to Christopher Wallace and Sean Combs, quote, only bore a passing resemblance to Amir Muhammad. Do you stand behind that?
Yeah, I don't think that they looked that much alike.
Fred Miller, Russ Poole's former supervisor, said the composite had an uncanny resemblance to Muhammad's driver's license photo. Do you disagree with that statement?
That's his opinion. That's his opinion. But I've already disagreed with that statement. When America's Most Wanted ran those composites during one of its episodes, there were hundreds of calls of people calling in saying, hey, that composite looks like my neighbor. Hey, that composite looks like a guy I just ran into down at the drugstore. Hey, that composite looks like this gang member from the Rolling 90s. So there were hundreds of people from their own perspective who thought that composite looked like somebody they knew. That's why that composite was essentially worthless.
Okay. Fair enough, Greg. But let's talk about misrepresenting facts like you've accused me of. You said in your book that Eugene Deal tentatively identified him as the Nation of Islam guy behind the wheel of the Impala. This is false, Greg. On camera, in the Biggie and Tupac documentary, Eugene Deal pointed to the photo of Muhammad in a lineup and 100% positively identified him. He was so clearly upset that the LAPD did not show him this photo when they interviewed him that you could see it in his face. He stated this. This is an eyewitness. How do you refute that?
No, that's easy to refute because long before that interview with Nick Broomfield ever took place, the LAPD had already sat down with Eugene Deal and had already shown him a six-pack. compiled of different photographs of other people, and he identified one of them as the Nation of Islam guy. So now we've got him looking at different photos and identifying different people as the Nation of Islam guy. So I called him up and I said, Eugene, what's the deal? And he goes, here's the deal, Greg. I never meant to say that. I know it was all dramatic on camera. The truth was I was simply saying it bore a resemblance, but when I made that very adamant identification, yeah, I was wrong, and I made a mistake. And that's during my interview with Eugene Deal, who had already identified somebody else as a Nation of Islam guy during his LAPD interview.
Then why in
that was a worthless identification.
Why in the wrongful death suit filed by Valletta Wallace in 2005 did he stand by that description that it was Amir Muhammad that he had seen?
Because he's just like half a dozen of these other guys. They dig a grave and then they jump in it and don't know what to do when they get caught with bad information. You know, these guys are invested in something, and instead of just admitting that they were wrong, they have to try to defend it. Eugene Deal was not a good witness in the Valletta Wallace civil case, which is exactly why David Mack and Amir Muhammad were dismissed from the case, because the attorney knew he couldn't carry forward with it.
I believe, Greg, that you downplayed his Muhammad's jailhouse visit to Mack as just seeing a childhood friend. Why did you not mention in your book the fact that Muhammad wrote a fake Social Security number and address in the jail visitation log?
Because he's visiting a criminal and he doesn't want to be associated with him. It's very simple. People do it all the time. Half the people that go down to the jail put false names or false information. It happens all the time. There's nothing really all that suspicious about it.
Really? Because you implicate Teresa Swan as a criminal because she used false IDs in your book. So that doesn't apply to Muhammad, who you, quote, say that he was just a law-abiding mortgage broker.
So are you suggesting that because he put down the wrong Social Security on a visitor log that he's a criminal?
I think it's a red flag.
Is he a criminal? Because that's the analogy you just drew.
Oh, yeah. I can follow up on that. The
criminal act? I'll have you know that's not a criminal act.
Okay, that might not be, but I've got one that is. The LAPD robbery and homicide detectives did a research on both of his adopted Muslim name and legal name and found 8 prior addresses, each with no forwarding. And in 1998, October 21st, I believe, Muhammad was arrested in Chino, California for brandishing a 9mm Beretta firearm while pulling up to a car next to him. He was arrested with a fake driver's license under the name Harry Muhammad. Is that a criminal act, Greg?
Yeah, that's a criminal act.
Now, you knew this guy used fake IDs, and you omitted it from your book. The FBI probed Amir Muhammad because of a jailhouse snitch named Michael Robinson. He said that Wallace's murder went by the name Amir, Ashmir, or Abraham, and he went to his house with a wire. So, is he a criminal or is he a law-abiding citizen? And is it not a red flag that he's putting down false information when he's visiting a corrupt cop in jail?
Well, here's the thing, Jesse. Just because somebody has a criminal history like yourself doesn't mean that they're involved in a murder. So you can't sit there and draw these conclusions that just because the guy has some questionable criminal history, that's not what we're interested in. We're interested in solving a murder. And there's nothing to connect Amir Muhammad, criminal or not, to this case. Even Michael Robinson, when he identifies Ashmir, Amir, Abraham, Kenny, Kiki, and gives all of these identifying criteria, none of them match up to Harry Billups, first of all. And it even gets more intriguing when you find out that his jailhouse informant pal was collaborating with him to lie to the LAPD. And once Michael Robinson got called on it, he admitted to it and said, hey, I've made the whole thing up. So now you don't even have the basis for that theory. There is no Amir to even work with anymore because the jailhouse informant has destroyed the foundation of this theory. So all the walls that have been built on it collapse accordingly.
Okay,
so you need to understand how a criminal investigation takes place and how when people are discredited with their information, we don't continue to follow through with their information when we know it's lies. So Harry Billups becomes ultimately irrelevant because there was never a basis to look into him to begin with.
Look, I just look at it as bias towards a fellow LAPD officer when you're painting Billups to be a law-abiding citizen when that's far from the case. And that's the point, and that's what I wanted you to answer. You can tell me about
okay.
procedure all day, and you can tell me about perception all day, but you misrepresented that in your book. The guy's a
That
criminal.
he's a law-abiding citizen?
Yes.
So if I wrote that and he's not a law-abiding citizen, forgive me, Mr. Billups. The point is, I'm investigating the murder of Biggie Smalls. And when I have excluded an individual from that case, then I'm no longer interested in him. I don't have the time, the energy, or I'm not getting paid to look at people that aren't involved. I'm getting paid to look at people who are involved. I'm trying to solve the case, not spend time running off on wild goose chases.
Okay. So you do take stock in Keefe D.
Yes, I do.
Do you believe everything that he said to you in that interview?
Yes, I do.
So you believe him when he said that you were the only person that he's ever told that story to, right?
I don't know if I don't know that that's a quote of mine.
No, that's a quote of his. I'm asking you. Do you believe that statement?
No, I'm not sure if that's a quote of his.
Okay. You want to talk about Wayne and Anderson?
Well, wait a minute. Let's go back. Where are you making this quote up from?
Can I just make a request, and you don't have to do it, but can we get some closure on before we switch to another one? Whether if you think it, I mean, Mr. Surratt, if you think that it was a kind of a settled issue, if you could say, or if you think you just agree to disagree, can you?
No, we can agree to disagree. I think that omitting certain things paints a different picture than, Greg, you tout transparency, but you omit a lot in your book, and I have more omissions.
But did I admit, should I write information in there that's irrelevant? Should I say that Harry Billups had gotten arrested for a gun even though he's no longer a suspect in the crime? I mean, what's the relevance of that, Jesse? Who cares?
Well, exactly. And Tammy Hawkins, you slammed her for her use of fake IDs, so...
Because she's a suspect in the crime. She's relevant.
All right. Fair enough, Greg. In the Tupac assassination Q&A, you agreed with Kevin Hackey and his claim of FBI involvement was true. But in your book...
Put that into context.
Okay, at the Tupac assassination Q&A video, it's on my YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You agreed...
I'm sorry to interrupt. The one in 2007, right? The first one?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You agreed with Hackey's claim of FBI involvement. You said, I didn't want to bust you out. Am I wrong?
His FBI involvement? No, I didn't want to bust him out that he was lying. I wasn't going to confront him right there in that auditorium with all these people that he was absolutely lying to their face about his role as an FBI agent, which was what he portrayed himself as. So, yeah, I didn't bust him out. I didn't call him on that. I probably should have, but I didn't.
Well, Kevin Hackey helped Russell Poole link David Mack and other LAPD officers to Death Row Records.
Through lies, yes, he did.
In your book, you said that he was too stressed out on meds and had a bad memory, and that's probably a quote from him. It is, I'm sure. But you paint him as a liar.
Absolutely.
This is your quote from Hackey's testimony in the trial. This is the quote. I am stressed out and have been on medication for the past 5 years. My memory is bad. I probably won't remember our conversation tomorrow. And around page 141 of your book, you tried to pass this admission off as the truth.
It's what he said.
Why did you leave out the fact that when Hackey was questioned by the same lawyer and asked on whether he wanted to testify in the case to support his earlier deposition of Knight, Reggie Wright, and LAPD cop involvement, he said, I'm in fear for my life. The lawyer asked him, what are you afraid of? And he said retribution by the Bloods, the LAPD, and associates of Death Row Records. Why did you omit that from your book?
Because I know what nonsense it is. I know exactly where Kevin Hackey was doing and what he was trying to accomplish. See, I'm privy to all his interviews, all his FBI interviews. I'm privy to all his criminal investigations that he was involved in. I'm aware of all of his criminal culpability. I have all the information, Jesse, that you don't have. So I'm in a position of advantage to render an opinion or render a statement about Hackey that you're not. You've only got newspaper articles to deal with. I've got all the investigative material. Or Hackey went to the FBI and said, hey, I need help because I'm being prosecuted for having felony charges against me. I will snitch on death row if you guys can help me. And they said, hey, you know what?
You there? Shit.
Yeah.